Testing. Testing this live chat, making some adjustments with the camera and the microphone. All right, hello, YouTube. Welcome to, I think this is my third live broadcast. Maybe. Coming. I'm not sure how well this will be transmitted. So. All right, we've got a couple of people watching. Cool. Welcome to the live chat. Yo right back to you. Finally, hi. What do you think about Muay Thai? Muay Thai is awesome, and anybody serious about fight training should do it. How old am I? I'm 41 years old. Yeah, I get asked about Muay Thai quite a bit, and that is one of the fundamental aspects of mixed martial arts that every serious mixed martial artist should train in. Hi from South Africa. Hi from China. How you doing? How's the audio, guys? You need to condition your shins. My recommendation, kick a heavy bag 100 times per leg per day, and in about 3 months you'll have pretty well conditioned shins. Keep doing that for several years, even better. There are a lot of crazy things people do to condition their shins. I remember when I was starting out in professional kickboxing way back when, people would always say, oh yeah, like roll glass Coke bottles on your shins and crazy stuff like that, or kick rocks or things like that. And that's nonsense. That'll deaden the nerves in the shins, but it will not strengthen your shins. And you want stronger bones. You don't want, deadened nerves. And to simply be blissfully unaware of the pain. Okay, what's my opinion on martial arts like judo and the combination of judo with strength training and calisthenics? Oh, sweet, my family's home. Hey, you're doing a live chat here on YouTube. How you doing, Vanessa? So, I was expecting my kids to come home a little bit later, but they're here right now. Judo is awesome. When you translate judo to mixed martial arts, you have to make some adjustments. Obviously, there is no gi. A lot of the techniques have to be modified greatly. One thing I say a lot about various martial arts is there are a couple of things from almost every martial art that works really well in mixed martial arts. Like right away, a couple of things. But a lot of that stuff you have to scrap completely. And some of it you can modify. But again, a lot of that stuff you can't expect to carry over into the very distinct and unique sport of mixed martial arts. What would I pick, flexibility or strength? There is no need to choose between the two. You can be flexible and you can be strong. There is no excuse not to focus on both. All right. Man, so many questions coming in right off the bat. How many of you are there? 54 of you so far. Cool. All right, just taking a look at some of these questions. I hate no-gi jiu-jitsu from Bubble Whip. I find it slippery and unrealistic due to the sweat. Am I wrong? Well, it depends on why you're training in jiu-jitsu. If you're training in jiu-jitsu for competition in the gi, then yeah, train in the gi. If you're training in jiu-jitsu for self-defense against people who are probably going to be wearing clothes and so on, then yeah, train in the gi. If you're training for mixed martial arts, no gi jiu-jitsu is better because that is closer to the sport of mixed martial arts, obviously. But at the same time, here's something a lot of people don't know who haven't fought in the cage. It is way, way different fighting without a shirt as opposed to fighting with a rash guard on. A rash guard is supposed to emulate shirtlessness, but it's way different. You are so slippery in a fight cage, especially when it's warm, especially if you're fighting outside in the summer. I've seen a lot of that going on here in China this last summer. And you get sweaty, it's like oil wrestling. So man, way, way different. Does shin conditioning cause arthritis? No, it does not. Arthritis is a joint condition. It is inflammation of the joints. Shin conditioning is building up calcification on the shin bones themselves. It has nothing to do with the joints. Okay. take a look at some of these other questions. Man, rapid fire questions like machine guns coming on here. What's better, old school or modern training? Man, that's a good question. There was stupid training in olden times, and there is stupid training now. There was great training back then, and there is great training today. So it really depends on who you ask. One thing that really surprised me about Jack Dempsey's book that I'm always quoting was when he talked about really bad boxing trainers, how there were so many bad boxing gyms back in his day. And that shocked me because I had this idea of the good old days where everybody was, I don't know, just better somehow. And he basically said, no, that's garbage. They were not. I love your voice. I love your comment. Lurbag Munsa, however you say your name. Yeah, man. But, yeah, throughout history there have been great trainers and poor trainers. If you look at old statues of ancient Olympians in Greece, centuries ago, way, way back when, these guys were lifting rocks instead of weights, and they still were able to attain these peak human athletic physiques and achieve incredible results. So, man, maybe they were just embellishing on the statues, I don't know, but I assume they had some models to work with. Oh man, more people asking about the Joe Rogan Podcast. When am I going to do the Joe Rogan Podcast, man? That is up to Joe Rogan. So again, if you really want to see that, go bother him. This subject comes up a lot. I would love to do that. There are a few things I would love to do before I die. One of them, I would love to be on the Joe Rogan Podcast. That would be fantastic. But again, he doesn't know who I am, I don't think, so go bother him about that if that's what you really want to see. Another thing I would really love to do, and this is the nerd in me coming out, I would love to do voiceovers for the next Elder Scrolls game, because I love those nerdy video games, man. Yeah, a few things I would love to do with my voice. Okay. Man, more questions than I can read. Ramsey, you want to go into the rabbit hole with Eddie Bravo? Well, that depends on what you mean by the rabbit hole. If we're talking about conspiracy theory and flat earth and all that, that would be an interesting conversation, I'm sure. If we're talking about jiu-jitsu, man, Eddie Bravo is an innovator as far as jiu-jitsu goes. So yeah, pay attention to what that guy does. He's got some really great stuff. I use a lot of 10th Planet technique. Traditional jiu-jitsu or BJJ? Man, that depends on what you mean by traditional jiu-jitsu. Because there are a ton of traditional jiu-jitsu styles, a ton of Japanese jiu-jitsu style. There's not just one, man. Have I tried rubber guard? Yes, I have. I used to be all about the rubber guard. That's all I used to do because my top game sucked like 15 years ago, 12 years ago. And everybody was taking me down, and I bought the book Mastering the Rubber Guard, and it really resonated with me because, again, my top game sucked. I sucked at sweeping people, but I was pretty good at recovering guard, getting there, and so I did a lot of rubber guard because it felt like a really strong control position to break people down, control their posture, and submit them. And yeah, I used that in a bunch of my fights back in the U.S. But yeah. Which martial art do you suck at? Or are you a master of everything? Nobody's a master of everything, man. Which martial art do I suck at? I don't know, man. I guess there is a limit to the number of martial arts I have trained, so I'm not sure how to answer that question. My knee always gets dislocated. Not dislocation, but ALC. Okay. Yeah, you should probably get some knee supports. Knee braces, knee compression sleeves, things like that. But that can help a lot. I've had a lot of knee issues over the years, and compression sleeves, knee pads, like wrestling knee pads, volleyball knee pads, those are really, really useful. So look into that if you haven't already. My thoughts on Hapkido. I get asked this a lot, and I've thought about making a video about it. Now, I did Taekwondo for the longest time, and I trained with a ton of different Taekwondo gyms back in the day. And Taekwondo in the United States is often, like the gyms often do Taekwondo and Hapkido in combination, at least where I lived. Like WTF style Taekwondo and Hapkido. And I never really got deep into the Hapkido aspect of it, but I was exposed to it a lot. So maybe it was just the area I was living in, but I never really met any really good Hapkido practitioners. Many years later, I met a guy who had a black belt in Hapkido, and he didn't really seem to know how to use it. And he just said, well, it was a thing I did. But one day we were training together, and he was doing some form by himself, and he had like this aha light bulb moment. He was like, whoa, I know what this is. Come here. And he like grabs my arm and does some cool little wrist lock. And then after that, every time he would spar, he started catching people with that wrist lock. So, I mean, that, according to him, came straight from Hapkido. So, oh, cool. We got a super chat here from Joe Anderson. So, like I said, there are like 3 or 4 things from any martial art that can translate directly to mixed martial arts. But sometimes you got to use your imagination. So, Joe Anderson says, Ramsey, what are your thoughts on Kaju Kembo? Let me scroll back up to that. Kaju Kembo. Do you think it's effective? Also thoughts on Chuk Kuk Do, AFAF, United Fighting Arts Federation, which was founded by Chuck Norris. I'm much more familiar with Chuck Norris than Chun Kuk Do, but I am familiar with Kaju Kenbo. I have a number of friends who train in Kaju Kenbo, and all of them have transitioned over to mixed martial arts, and all of them are pretty decent fighters. So I'm not too familiar with the actual training process of Kaju Kenbo, but the results, in my opinion, kind of speak for themselves, at least the athletes that I know who made that transition from Kaju Kenbo to MMA. So yeah, I have a friend, Angelo. He's a Kaju Kenbo practitioner and also coach over in Japan. He came over, visited me in Shanghai, did a video with him. He's got a heavily underrated YouTube channel. He does an awesome podcast, which like nobody watches right now, but go check that out. His channel is Social Jello, spelled Gelo, short for Angelo. So go check out Angelo Ferrer over at Social Jello and ask him all about Kaju Kenbo. He's got a lot of great stuff to say about that. Our next super chat comes from Magnum Dong. Hey, thank you so much, man. He says, Ramsey, I've been going through some really rough times. I'm just sick of it all. I've really been considering going into the wild. Like that book. Okay, man. I get it. That makes sense. That's reminding me of some conversations my friend Dan Lucart has been having on Facebook lately about how society is overrated. How do we really need society? And yeah, man, I get it. Sometimes we have rough times. I don't know what specifically you're going through, but yeah, I can. Your words resonate with me. I think we all feel like this from time to time, and it's easy to think, man, nobody else gets it, nobody else understands. But yeah, going into the wild, literally or figuratively, is a really interesting experience. A couple of weeks ago, I went to the wild myself. I went to the deserts of northern China. And I was out there for a week, minimalist living, no electricity, no plumbing, no water, no food. Yeah, there was no food for several days. Out in the desert, it kind of sucked. But something about being out there in the wild and then coming back to civilization was really important, I would say. It's something we need to experience from time to time. So, yeah, man. Take a step out into the wild, figuratively or literally, in some way, shape, or form. All right. Let me scroll down here. We have some more comments. All right. my predictions and thoughts on Demetrius Johnson versus Dan Kingad for the Flyweight Grand Prix Championship. I haven't seen Danny fight, to be honest, so I'm not sure how to answer that question. I have not seen him fight, so I will check him out. Demetrius Johnson, that's a guy you cannot look past in any fight. He's dangerous in any fight in his weight class. Have I ever been in a legal or illegal street fight? Are there legal street fights? Man, I got in scraps when I was a kid at school. I got beat up all the time. Got in fights with the bullies in high school, in middle school, in grade school. In the streets? Nah, man. Nah. I've been assaulted in the streets. I've been robbed, mugged, had guns and knives pointed at me. But fights in the street, man, you don't fight with that. You give them what they want and you move on. And some people say, well, sometimes you can't do that. Yeah, sometimes you can't. Sometimes you die. But man, if you fight a dude with a knife, you're probably going to get stabbed. So yeah, let's not go down the self-defense rabbit hole too much today. Should we keep gloves? MMA Peter Johnson asks. He's asked this question a few times. I've got mixed feelings about this because I would like to have fewer rules and regulations in MMA rather than more rules and regulations in MMA. And gloves present certain problems. They allow you to punch harder and more recklessly. I think what I would really like to do is get rid of the tape. Get rid of the wraps under the gloves. And I think that would solve a lot of problems. Almost every situation, almost every story where there has been loaded wraps which have injured or killed a fighter, it's all about what's under the gloves more so than what's in the gloves themselves or the actual condition of the gloves. So get rid of the tape, and I really believe that would solve a lot of problems. If you had 4-ounce MMA gloves with nothing under them, you couldn't punch as recklessly as the fighters currently do, but at the same time, the fighters wouldn't get as marked up as with bare-knuckle boxing, and slightly less chance of breaking the hand. So I think that would be a good compromise. All right. Is supplementation necessary for elite fighters, as most of them are caught for banned substances using them? Well, that depends on what you mean by supplementation. Supplementation doesn't mean taking illegal substances or performance enhancers. It simply means adding things to your diet that are lacking. So, for example, if you are missing vitamins and minerals from your diet and you take a vitamin or mineral supplement, yes, that's how I say the word vitamin. I'm British, guys. Yes, I'm an American-born British national. A lot of people don't know that. But yeah, that's a supplement. If your diet needs more protein, and so you take a whey protein supplement, that's a supplement. You're adding something to your diet. Do you need to supplement? No, you don't. But yeah, you can make the argument, everybody's cheating, so you gotta cheat to keep up with them. Do Navy SEALs learn MMA? I do not know. I'm not a Navy SEAL. I do have a nephew in the Navy. You should ask him. Shout out to my nephew, Riley. Thank you for your service, Riley. You are awesome. So I'm not really sure what goes into Navy hand-to-hand combat training. I will ask my nephew and maybe get back to you there. What got you into MMA? Oh man, I've told this story a couple of times on my channel. I'll give you a quick synopsis. I was a professional kickboxer. I transitioned from traditional martial arts like Taekwondo, Shotokan Karate, Capoeira into American kickboxing. And I did kickboxing and Muay Thai for a number of years. And then I got challenged on the internet by a guy who later became a friend of mine, but we had a little spat online, and he basically said, well, you might think you're hot stuff as a kickboxer, but I would destroy you in an MMA fight. And I was a pragmatic person, and I said, all right, then let's do an MMA fight. We actually did 2 fights. The first was a kickboxing match, and I beat him second round TKO. And then he said, all right, I fought in your realm, so you come to mine. And so I did. And I beat him with a first round submission. submission to strikes. My Sherdog record says it was a guillotine choke. It was not. I had an arm around his neck, a front headlock, but I was landing liver shots, and that's what he ended up tapping out to. So that was my first MMA fight, and I thought, well, that was incredibly easy because I got some lucky shots in there. And I decided, I'm going to keep doing this because kickboxing was a dying art in America. I don't know if it still is. It was never really popular. Man, kickboxing was never really popular in America. Like, man, even Chuck Liddell, when he was world champion back in the U.S. for his world title fight, he made like $500, including the win bonus. And that wasn't far off from... That was not far off from the highest paycheck I made from American kickboxing. It's not a very high-paying sport. At least it wasn't when I was doing it. But MMA, that was coming in and becoming more popular. And I thought, well, if I want to keep going with combat sports, I have to transition to cage fighting, and I have to learn how to do this stuff too. So yeah, that's what got me into MMA. Kickboxing does not teach headlocks, ? Says Smooth Smash. Traditionally, no. Unless you were talking about Muay Thai. In Muay Thai, yeah, there's a lot of neck wrestling and headlocks and things like that that go on. In American kickboxing, K1 rules kickboxing, no clinching. Or no inactive clinching. No tying up, if you will. All right, we got a super chat from Scott McGregor. Thank you so much, my friend. He says, you once mentioned you've heard of HEMA. Yeah, Historical European Martial Arts. I know exactly what that is. Can you share your thoughts? I'd like to hear the thoughts of an outsider, person well educated in martial arts. Okay, man, there were a few HEMA clubs. One of them was called the ARMA Club. I don't remember what that stands for. It's an acronym like HEMA, basically Historical European Martial Arts. And there were a few of those in my college, and I lived right next door to the guys in the ARMA Club, and they all shared a house together, and they would all be in their backyard practicing with swords and stuff, and doing their sword fighting techniques, and reading these old German codices of wrestling and sword fighting and so on. And we had some really interesting discussions, had some super interesting discussions with these guys. So what I love about the HEMA guys is that they keep it real, if you will. And that's interesting because if you watch, movies and stuff, the movies generally don't keep fight scenes real. They keep them entertaining. So, yeah, I love how HEMA guys keep it real, historically accurate, etc. Do I do neck strengthening exercises? Yes, I do. And the number one neck strengthening exercise, which is probably going to surprise a lot of you, is deadlifts. And some of you might be thinking, what, deadlifts? But that doesn't strengthen your neck, that's about the legs and the back. Well, guess what's connected to your back? Your neck. And when you do deadlifts and you flex that neck, yeah. I do a lot of bridging. And there are a lot of conversations out there saying that is bad and wrong and you shouldn't do it. And it's going to aggravate injuries on the neck. And if you have neck injuries, it probably will. But yeah, I do a lot of wrestlers' bridges. I do a lot of walk-around bridges. I show this a lot in my technique videos. Got a whole playlist of that on my channel. Go check it out. So yes, I do a ton of neck exercises. And I find that's really important, especially for wrestling, if you want to add a good top game into your grappling. Yeah, strengthen your neck. But if you're afraid of going upside down and doing, spinning around on your head or whatever, focus on deadlifts, and that's going to solve a lot of problems. Okay, how many miles a week should a fighter run? I'm going to tell you something controversial. Running is way overrated for fighters. I did 2 podcasts on this subject with my friend Ned, and it made a lot of people on the internet angry. Where Ned and I basically said Ned basically said, don't run at all, running is useless. I won't say it's useless. If you love to run, keep doing it. Unless you have joint issues, joint problems, then, keep doing it. No problem. If running is fun for you, keep doing it, right? But do you need to run to be a great fighter? In my opinion, no. No, you don't. One thing, if you hate running, If you hate running and you're in physical condition to do it, then do it sometimes. Because for fighters, you should put yourself in uncomfortable places and do things you are uncomfortable with. Things that push you out of the comfort zone. So if you hate running, yeah, do that. But you need to run a lot to be a great fighter? No. Super chat from Joe Anderson. Again, awesome. Ramsey, in your opinion, what is the most practical of the traditional martial arts? Ooh. Well, that depends on what we are practicing. Depends on what you're practicing. Depends on what your goal is, because there are practical applications for all kinds of stuff in different areas of life. Are we talking about practical for mixed martial arts? Like if I'm a master of this traditional martial art, can I just plug in and play to the game of MMA, if you will? Or practical for self-defense? If 3 guys with weapons come and assault me by surprise on the streets, will I be able to defend myself with that martial art? Practical for fun? Practical for fitness? Because those are all practical uses of martial arts. I think every traditional martial art has some practical things that'll carry over into MMA, like I just said. For MMA, Joe Anderson, thank you again for that super chat, man. You are useful, my friend. For MMA, okay. I'm tempted to say wrestling, because that is the oldest martial art, but it's generally not considered a traditional martial art, because traditional doesn't mean old. It means taught in the traditional manner with forms and with traditional discipline and uniforms and dojos and all that sort of thing. So, hold on, I got some feedback here. Okay. So if I can't say wrestling, I guess I would have to go to another form of wrestling that is considered a traditional martial art. So I'm going to say Shuaijiao, which is Chinese for wrestling, Chinese jacketed wrestling or Northern Beijing wrestling. There you go. That is a practical martial art to transition into mixed martial arts. And a lot of the martial artists over here in China have a background in Shuaijiao or Chinese traditional wrestling, in addition to Sanda and whatever else they train. So, sorry if that feels like cheating, but yeah, man. Traditional martial arts that focus on grappling are huge, not just because grappling is important for mixed martial arts, but because it makes you tough, man. It gets you used to pressure. It gets you used to competition. Because in those traditional martial arts that involve grappling, you must compete. And the reason a lot of traditional martial arts don't fare very well in cage fighting is because there's no competition, or very limited competition. So without that element of competition and pressure and stress and combat stress and performance anxiety, you will not perform very well in mixed martial arts. So I hope that helps to answer your question. They banned IV hydration after weight cuts. Good. Yeah, I know 1FC did that a long time ago. Before it was called 1FC, it was called Martial Combat. And I competed in that, and I almost killed myself cutting weight. And you can see it in the fight. It's a bad fight, man. I was fighting a world Brazilian Jiu Jitsu champion after cutting a ridiculous amount of weight that almost killed me, man. That weight cut, I was out, cold, like knocked out on the floor in the sauna. Man, during this weight cut. And so during that fight, oh man, hold on, I gotta plug in the camera here. During that fight, man, it showed. I had nothing left in the tank, even after attempting to rehydrate. Now, I did not use any IVs or anything like that to rehydrate, but man, not too long after, there was a fighter who fought for, I don't know if it was Martial Combat or after they transitioned to 1FC, that actually died from cutting weight, but it wasn't very much longer, and he cut way less weight than I did. And that was a wake-up call for me, like, oh man, I knew that was a stupid thing to do, but that really brought it home. That was a really, really stupid thing to do. So man, be extremely careful with weight cuts. Cut the minimal amount possible to fight in your respective weight class. Super chat from Timothy Craig, who says, thoughts on Arnis as a sport as compared to MMA? Man, Arnis is pretty cool. If you're familiar with Captain Krav Maga from my self-defense videos, he's portrayed by my friend Nils, a fellow from Germany who practices a bunch of different martial arts, including Arnis and all the Filipino martial arts, Eskrima, Kali. And I have a few friends over here in Shanghai who are really good at it, and I've been trying to get together with those guys for a video. Like, how does Arnis transition to MMA? I mean, it's a radically different thing. I think, though, the way it's taught, in that the weapon is an extension of the body. So learn to use your body first, and then you learn to use a weapon as an extension of that. That's a good philosophy. And if you teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the same manner, like the gi is a weapon, it's an extension of the body, it's not a replacement for it, then you'll be better at Jiu-Jitsu. A guy asked, will I do BJJ tutorials? I've done quite a few of them. Go check them out on my channel. Got a whole playlist of technique videos that nobody watches, which is why I've had to disguise my technique videos in these entertaining forms, such as that video on Attack on Titan I did the other day. Yes, that was a cleverly disguised technique video that I tricked you guys into watching. Does gi or no gi make you better? Yes. Yes, train in both. The contrast is valuable. It's just like, does training in boxing gloves or training without boxing gloves make you better? Yes, the contrast is valuable. Train both. Okay. Man, so many questions popping up here. Have I ever been burned out from martial arts? Yes and no. The great thing about MMA, to me in particular, and the reason I love mixed martial arts more than any other combat sport, and I've competed in 5 different professional combat sports, but the reason I love MMA the most is because there's always a different aspect to work on, so I never get bored with it. I remember I did this boxing camp, this 4-month boxing camp, getting ready for a fight. That's all we did, just boxing, nothing but boxing. And I love boxing, and boxing is cool, and everybody should do it, I think. But I got so burned out on boxing after that. I didn't want to box another round for months after that. So it was good, it was important, it was necessary, but man, right now it's so much better to be able to rotate my cross training so I can do boxing on a specific day and kickboxing and jiu-jitsu and judo and all these other things on separate training sessions, so I never get burned out. How much BJJ training does it take for a boxer to hold his own in an MMA fight? You know, in modern MMA, I would say wrestling is way more important than Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I know that's probably going to step on a lot of toes out there. But a lot of people have this idea that MMA is a combination of boxing and Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu and wrestling, and it kind of is, but it's not. I made a video on this subject called Boxing plus Wrestling or Jiu-Jitsu plus whatever, something like that. Go look that one up. To hold your own in an MMA fight, and there are different levels of MMA, man. There's amateur, there's pro. If you're asking, like, how much would a professional boxer, like a high-level professional boxer, have to train in grappling in order to survive and thrive in the UFC right now? That's an interesting question. That's a really interesting question. We can entertain that for a while. Who is that dude who knocked out, blanking on the name, heavyweight fighter, had some facial hair. There was a boxer transition to MMA. Man, I'm blanking on the names. This is what happens when you fight for a living and get hit in the head a little too much. You forget names. But yeah, good heavyweight boxer transitioned to MMA. He had a couple of fights. I think he lost one and he won one. But he knocked out a former UFC heavyweight champion. And he gave an interview afterward, and it was a very humble interview, and I loved the response he gave. He said, look, boxing is awesome. It gives you the tools to knock people out if you catch them with their guard down. And with these 4-ounce gloves, yeah, you can hit really hard and, catch people in very specific places, right on the chin and so on. But if you don't catch them early, they'll catch you with their grappling. And if you don't know how to grapple, it's over if boxing is all you know. So, very, very humble in victory and very humble in defeat. I wish I could remember that dude's name right now and his opponent. So, yeah, man. So boxers back in the olden days, they used to cross-train in wrestling. That was the norm. Like back in the early 1900s, 1920s, back in Jack Dempsey's day, it was common for boxers to cross-train in wrestling. So Jack Dempsey, he was a wrestler as well. A lot of people don't know this, but he actually did professional wrestling as well as boxing. And it wasn't just freestyle wrestling, it was submission wrestling. It was catch as catch can wrestling. So he was well versed in submission fighting. Man, I would have loved to see a prime Jack Dempsey compete in UFC 1. That would be really, really interesting. Super chat from Timothy Craig. Thoughts on Gracie Jiu-Jitsu? Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is awesome. It changed the world of martial arts, man. Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is more commonly known today as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu almost every day. I roll almost every day. It's important if you are planning on being a cage fighter. You got to know Jiu-Jitsu, man. So train Jiu-Jitsu. It's good for you. It's fun. Well, when you get used to it, it's fun. If you're not used to it, it's kind of weird. It's like, oh, there's a dude squishing me. He's hugging me. Get off. Get off. But we are only able to see what we already know and understand. So when we understand Jiu-Jitsu, we can see it. When we don't understand it, it's weird, and so on. I love it. I think everybody should do it. Everybody should give it a try. Super chat from Kip Struling, who says, what would you recommend for a Wing Chun Karate Kenpo guy like me to do to start spar training to improve and getting into MMA? Okay. Wing Chun and Kenpo. Okay, cool. Start delving deep into grappling. And I know that's in many ways kind of the opposite of what you're doing, and that's why. So that you don't have that big gaping hole in your game. So you've been doing a lot of striking arts with the Wing Chun and the Kenpo karate. And I know Kenpo does involve some grappling, but get deeply into grappling, deeply invested into competition-style grappling. Wrestling, jiu-jitsu, catch wrestling, sambo, those type of things. And that is going to fill in that other half of your game that you're missing and allow you to use the techniques from Wing Chun and from Kenpo much more effectively than you ever imagined possible. You should check out my friend Tyler, known on YouTube as the Wing Chun Pilgrim. He was a Wing Chun practitioner for quite some time. Then he got really heavily invested in Jiu-Jitsu. He's currently a purple belt in both the 10th Planet system and also in the gi. And he's got this really interesting video about using Jiu-Jitsu in the guard in mixed martial arts. And it's really cool. It's really interesting how when he started cross-training in Jiu-Jitsu, he was able to see all of these openings that Wing Chun doesn't even teach and that Jiu-Jitsu doesn't teach. But he found this fusion and this way to use what he took from both styles and create something new and interesting and effective. The idea is that Wing Chun is all about controlling the center line, and against somebody with good footwork who's moving all around, that's really hard to do. However, if you're stuck in one place, in close quarters, which is what closed guard is, somebody pulls guard on you, you're on top, suddenly that Wing Chun, which Bobby is saying is garbage and fake and all that, and I'm not going to dispute that because a lot of it is not great, but in that very specific range of combat, suddenly, what seemed completely useless and garbage standing up has a valid use. So that trapping range inside the guard, yeah, really interesting. And some of these techniques that my friend Tyler shows on his channel, yeah, I use that stuff. And a lot of mixed martial artists do use it when fighting, doing their ground and pound from the top. So ground and pound in the guard, that is a place where Wing Chun actually does come in handy. But you wouldn't know that unless you trained in both styles. Okay. Does training in the gi translate into MMA? Short answer, no. However, as I often say, contrast is valuable. I've said it already on this super chat. Contrast is valuable, so once in a while put on the gi for that contrast. Harris, last name, says, top 5 submissions for you. My top 3, I'll give them to you right now. Number 1, the rear naked choke, because it is the highest percentage by far. Number 2, the triangle choke, because it gives you the highest level of control, and you don't even have to finish the choke to finish fights from that position. Number 3, the heel hook, because it is the great equalizer. But you asked for 5, so I'll give you a couple others. I really love calf cranks, and I use them all the time, and I catch a lot of people. And for me, calf cranks are a really high percentage submission, and a lot of people don't train them, so it catches them by surprise. And when I'm setting up calf cranks, a lot of people, even experienced jiu-jitsu athletes, have no clue what I'm doing because I use a lot of unorthodox setups to get them. And so, yeah, I use a ton of calf cranks. So if you're rolling with me, watch your calves, watch your legs, because I'll be going after them. And the other thing, man, I would say it's kind of a toss-up between the Marcelo Teen, guillotine variation, and arm bars, just because arms are always there. So, yeah, top 5 submissions to recap: rear naked choke, triangle choke, heel hook. Personally, for me, the calf crank, and I'm going to say arm bar, because it just comes up so often, and there's so many ways and positions where that comes into play. Okay, let's take another question here. What is if Mike Tyson, another super chat from Joe Anderson. Joe Anderson, thank you. If Mike Tyson and Ali boxed each other in their prime, who do you think would win and why? Oh man, I've received this question so many times, and I've been avoiding this question specifically because this is a hard one to answer. I know some people who love Ali and hate Tyson are like, Ali would win, and people who love Tyson and hate Ali are clearly, Tyson would murder him. But that's a tough question. It's not like, that video I made, Muhammad Ali versus Bruce Lee, who would win, where I said, probably the heavyweight professional fighter would win that match. Because this is a more evenly matched fight. This is a match between 2 legendary heavyweights who both knew how to play the game, both knew how to box, both similar weight, height, etc. Man, that's a tough question. I'm already seeing a lot of strong opinions in the comment. Ali would drown him, Tyson would knock him out in the first, and so on. Yeah, man, this is one of those questions I have been avoiding for the longest time because, honestly, I don't know, but it is fun to imagine. There was a boxing game that came out on the Xbox a while back, which was advertised with these matchups that you could play in the game with Tyson versus Ali. And one of my favorite things to do with that game was just play that match out. Just see how it played out. And I know it's not the real thing. It's computer-controlled opponents. But, man, it is so fun to use the imagination. But who would probably win? I would guess, and I'm going to venture a guess. I would guess, and please don't hate me for this. Now go ahead, hate me. Hate me. I'm going to own my nickname, Hater Sensei Grandmaster, Chosen One, Ramsey Dewey, right here. I'm going to say Tyson would probably win. He would probably win. How would he win? I would say it would be a fairly narrow victory. I know a lot of people in the comments are saying it would be a landslide either way. I don't think so. I think it would be a narrow victory. Neil deGrasse Tyson would win, says Bobby G. Maybe in an argument about physics. Probably. Interesting question from Truth Vendor, who says, what's the likelihood, in your opinion, of the MMA scene incorporating fields instead of cages or rings, and how would you see it shaking up the pro MMA scene? Okay, that would change everything. For a while. I know Joe Rogan has talked about this a lot. He says, I don't like the cage. I'd like to see just a big open field where you can run forever. But the thing is, you can't run forever. Eventually you run into a barrier, and then it turns into the same thing as current mixed martial arts. You get pushed up against the barrier, and then it turns into cage grappling. And I love cage grappling. I love the technique that comes into play up against the cage. It's cool, and it's one of those things from mixed martial arts that translates directly into self-defense. I know I poo-poo the self-defense industry a lot, but that's one of those things they really need to spend more time on, is fighting up against a wall, up against a barrier. I mean, that's one of the aspects of grappling in MMA that is so radically different from sport jiu-jitsu, is the cage. So anytime I'm sparring with somebody who's a really good jiu-jitsu guy, and I end up in his guard, and we are sparring in a gym that has a wall or cage panels, the first thing I will do up against a high-level jiu-jitsu practitioner is push them up against the cage, up against the wall, and break their posture up against the wall. And push them into these positions where they are not used to. Turn them into a fish out of water. And suddenly that black belt or that brown belt or whatever belt they are, who is exceptional on that flat surface, if they haven't trained in that position, now they're a white belt again. And that's really interesting. So that's a great strategy for MMA, is find out what your opponent is good at, find out what sport they come from, and then do all the things that they don't do in their sport. Like press them up against the cage in that 45-degree corner between the floor and the cage. So how else would that change it? I mean, the UFC cage right now is actually pretty big. It's way bigger than most boxing rings, and it's way bigger than most amateur cages. So there is a lot of room to run around. Like if you watch Holly Holm, for example, this is interesting. You watch her in the cage, she runs all over the place. She uses so much evasive footwork. And there are a bunch of fighters like that, but yeah, Holly Holm specifically. But then watch her boxing matches, her world title fights in the ring. The ring was way, way smaller than the octagon. And her footwork was way, way different. Her whole game plan changed like 1,000% when she transitioned from boxing to the UFC. I mean, she wasn't dancing around the boxing ring. It was very tight, very compact, very, very close quarters type of movement. And then again, man, you see the flying all over the cage once she had that open space. Now, if you gave somebody a field, yeah, I think we would see a lot more running around, like literally running around, sprinting around, that sort of stuff. And I think ultimately it would end up being the same thing. You'd see somebody run the other guy into the barrier because there would be one. And then, yeah, it would turn into the same thing with a bunch of unused empty space. Where am I from? Okay, I was born in the state of Idaho in the United States of America. I am a dual citizen of the US and the UK. My family is from Great Britain. I have lived in a number of places throughout the world. I've lived in Argentina, spent some time in Mexico. I currently live in the People's Republic of China. I've lived in China for over 10 years now. And got somebody spamming the question, how do you recover from being kicked in the balls during an MMA spar? Pro tip, wear a Thai steel cup when you spar. And that will not be an issue for you. How do you recover? If you're not wearing one, you gotta wait it out, man. That's it. Wait it out. Wear the proper equipment. Wear a Thai steel cup. Tie that thing on tight, and you will not have that issue. You can get kicked in the groin without phasing you at all. Okay. What other questions? Why does Master Wong not have real sparring videos? You will have to talk to Master Wong about that. This is turning into a Q&A for Master Wong. Yeah, ask him that question. Master Wong, why don't you have sparring videos? Have I thought about joining the army? I weighed the pros and the cons of joining the army when I was a young man, and I decided against it. I'm now 41 years old, and my current career choices are not consistent with joining the army at this point in my life. So, hope that answers your question. You're joining the army soon. That's fantastic. You're nervous. That's understandable. And, yeah, man, thank you for your willingness to serve, my friend. Will I ever go back to the U.S.? Probably, eventually. There is a limit to how long foreigners can live in China after all. I have not reached that limit, but there is a limit. Does neck strength affect KO probability? Probably a little bit. Probably a little bit. If you got a pencil neck and like no strength and you can't even hold your own head up and you're like a bobblehead and somebody hits you, yeah, your head's going to go wagging all over the place. If you have enough neck strength to keep your head in the correct position so that your forehead is the most prominent feature on the head, so when a punch does come, it lands here, and you can maintain that position as opposed to flopping all over the place, again, like a bobblehead, that'll be helpful. Does appendicitis surgery as a teenager affect your MMA career in the future? Yeah, and I'll tell you why. My appendix burst at the age of 21 and almost killed me. I had a bunch of follow-up surgeries because the removal of the ruptured appendix was botched. That almost killed me. I spent many months in the hospital at the brink of death because of this. I had, my intestines started closing off together because of the scar tissue. It was terrible. I've got this massive scar on my guts, and for the longest time, I was bedridden. I couldn't do anything. It hurt to breathe. I couldn't even talk. That's how bad it was. I couldn't walk. I had to relearn every physical activity. So how did that affect my MMA training? It made me more determined. It made me more focused. It made me realize life is short. Life is pretty damn short. Yeah, throwing out some biblical language out there. Yeah, so if your appendicitis gets diagnosed right away now, today, it's minor surgery. They can go with a laparoscope, suck that thing right out, send you out of the hospital. If that's the case, man, that's barely an inconvenience. But man, for me, man, it laid me up for months. Man, I had so many surgeries. I remember spending just night after night after night just vomiting, everything because my intestines tied up into knots and they had to cut me open. I almost ended up with a colostomy bag, man. If you have a colostomy bag on you, yeah, you're not going to be fighting professionally. But if you have a tiny little laparoscope scar on you, yeah, you will be fine, man. You will be fine. And the great news about having your appendix out is that it will never burst again. So, if you're worried about getting into MMA training because of that, don't worry about that. Get into MMA training. Okay. How much of fighting is mental? All of it? How much of fighting is mental? All of it. The same way you could say how much of life is mental? All of it. Your body is your mind, and your mind is your body. We're not brains floating in jars, guys. We don't exist separately from our minds. And our mind is our body, is our soul, is our self. All of it. How to take down heavy opponents? Well, that depends. That depends. I've been asked this question a lot over the years. There was this girl who probably weighed about 100 pounds soaking wet. That's like, 45 kilos? And She came to my gym, and there was a dude who weighed like maybe 130 kilos, and he was strong as an ox. And this girl wanted to know how to take this guy down. And she wasn't any good at wrestling or grappling or anything like that, and this guy was actually pretty decent at it. And that's not just an uphill battle, that is trying to climb a vertical surface that is covered in oil with your hands tied. Man. So there are a lot of variables that go into that question, but assuming you know how to wrestle, and assuming your opponent knows how to wrestle, how do you take them down? I like ankle picks against big guys. A lot of people don't. But when you're fighting a big guy, it's hard to get your arms around for a double leg when they're substantially larger than you. But grabbing a foot, grabbing an ankle, I find that a lot easier, especially if I can get behind him, like shoot in for a high crotch, and then rotate 90 degrees, drive the shoulder into the pit of the knee, pull on the base of the ankle, drive them down to the floor, then climb on their back or start leg riding. A lot of times it's easier to leg ride a big guy than to climb on his back. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, Google some of those terms, leg riding, ankle pick, look up some wrestling tutorials. But yeah, learn how to wrestle. What do I think about karate? Karate's awesome. I trained in Shotokan karate for some time as a younger man. Karate can teach you a lot of great stuff, how to kick, how to punch, right? Depending on the style, some karate styles teach some grappling as well. But yeah, there's good stuff to be learned in karate. It was a lot of fun. And a lot of mixed martial artists today who cross-train and everything are able to showcase their karate. It looks like my kids are coming out here to see what I'm doing. What time is it for you? It is 3:39 p.m. in Shanghai, China right now. Our friend Zach X, has asked this question a couple of times. Is it okay if I take a break from MMA for some time as I am currently in college? Sure, man. If you don't have time, because college can be a very busy time. Hey, Eve, do you want to be in the video? Want to be in the live chat? Come on over here.
I want you to go somewhere else so we can play loud.
Oh, you want to play out here in the living room? My kids want to play in the living room. I might have to cut this Q&A a little short. I'll take a few more questions here. You sure you don't want to be in the live chat, Eve? It's pretty awesome.
Okay, fine.
Thoughts on full body heavy lifting 3 times per week for fighters? Yes, do it. Squats, deadlifts, pull-ups, focus on the compound lifts. Yeah, do it. Super chat from Noel Chief. Best method to borrow 100,000 arrows. Why do you want to borrow 100,000 arrows? Is that a pop culture reference I don't get? I don't understand the question. Thank you for the super chat, though. Best method to borrow 100,000 arrows. Okay, I'm going to take this question as seriously as I can. Ask. You would be shocked at what you can get if you simply ask for it. So go out there and ask somebody who has 100,000 arrows, can I borrow some? Hey, it's my daughter Eve. She is 7 years old.
I'm going to ruin the video. I'm going to ruin the video.
You want to ruin? Nah.
Yeah.
Q&A with my daughter Eve right now. Any questions for Eve? Eve is kind of a prodigy when it comes to arm bars. She did her first arm bar at age 2 when I was sitting watching a Marcelo Garcia video. Scott says, hello, Eve. And Marcelo was teaching the armbar. My other daughter, Ivy, right here, she's 4 years old, getting into the live chat
I'm
right
7.
there.
I'm 7.
She's 7. Don't speak too close to the microphone. How is your dad so awesome, Eve? Says Zach. Okay. Yes, he is cute. My kids are super cute. Hey, you. What's up?
Hi.
Hi. So, sorry, my kids distracted me from the question I was asking. Do I think Bruce Lee was a fake? No, absolutely not. Bruce Lee was awesome. Bruce Lee was 100% real at what Bruce Lee did. Bruce Lee was the greatest martial arts actor ever,
martial arts ever. man.
Was he the greatest fighter ever?
Was he the greatest fighter ever?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Eve is repeating.
Eve is repeating.
Just in case you didn't hear me the first time.
You didn't hear me the first time.
So for what he was, Bruce Lee was awesome.
Yeah, Bruce
but what
was
I love
awesome.
about Bruce Lee.
What I love about Bruce Lee.
What I love about Bruce Lee was that he was honest. And in an interview, Bruce Lee said, I want to be remembered as a great actor. Not as a star, but as a great actor. Yeah, there's an echo in here. We got a super chat from our friend Saqib Shahid. Thank you so much, my friend. Yes, I have 2 daughters. They're both hanging out here.
Yeah, because we want to destroy the video.
How much does a tooth fairy pay in China?
It pays $100,000.
Hey. Don't grab the microphone, please.
Daddy has a microphone.
Yeah, you'll knock it over.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm gonna have to hold this up now.
Okay.
So yeah, like I said, Eve was kind of a prodigy with arm bars. That's what I was talking about. Let go, please. Let go.
Hi.
Yeah. So I'm watching this Marcelo Garcia video, and he's teaching arm bars, and my daughter keeps asking me, milk, get me some milk, please. I'm like, just a minute. This video is almost over. And she's watching this video, and then she grabs my arm, wraps her leg around my neck and around my torso, starts to hyperextend my arm, and she says, milk now. And I'm like, all right, that deserves some milk. I got a picture of it because, she's so small. I grabbed my camera with my other hand and snapped a picture of it. So maybe I'll post that up on the community page here. We had a super chat from Joe Anderson again. Have you watched any UFC fights training from CM Punk, Phil Brooks? How do you think he can improve? I haven't seen his training. I did see his fights, but I have not seen his training. How can he improve? To just keep training. That's it. So if CM Punk wants to get good at mixed martial arts, just keep training. That's all there is to it. There's no secret pill. There's no magic pill to it. You want to put that on your lap?
Yeah, I'll put that.
Okay. Again, there's no magic pill. Just keep training, keep doing it. That's why I always say after every video, get out there and train. That is the secret. That is the secret. There's nothing else. Nothing else out there.
I'm down here. Get out the train.
All right, a couple more questions here.
Wow.
The next generation of female Bruce Lees.
Wow.
Yeah. They've got high hopes for you too.
Oh, I see the guy.
Prelund Fucht says, I don't know how to say your last name. Fucht. Hey Eve, stick your finger into your dad's ear.
What? I did that 100 times.
She's already done that. She's not going to do it on camera. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Because I'm going to do it right now. If that can get the computer off of me.
Tin says, pinch your dad's nose.
There.
I should stop reading these comments. Pinch his ear. Okay, guys, come on. Cut it out. They're not going to stop now.
Go on, get the computer off of me.
Here, let me read the comments there.
Okay, get the...
For someone with fighting experience, when should I start with boxing? Or someone with no fighting experience, when should I start boxing or wrestling? As soon as you want to. If you want to get good at boxing and wrestling, do it soon. That might sound dismissive, but that's the answer. All right. How do MMA fighters deal with body shots? I'm actually working on a video right now about body shots. I did a light sparring session with one of my students recently. Hey, Ivy, how's it going? We were going really light, but I had this really well-timed knee that I timed with his breathing. Just kind of poked him in the belly, and man, that put him out. So even light contact body shots can be, okay. Even light contact body shots can end them out. So I'm going to take one more question, and then I'm going to spend some time with my kids. So, last question, guys.
Bitches nose and his ears and his face and his cheeks. Bitches!
What are the best BJJ sweeps for MMA? That is a great question. The best BJ Day sweeps for Emily are the simple ones. Ow. I really love the elevator sweep.
Get his
The butterfly sweep.
Get his ears. Get his
Sometimes
ears.
called the De Souza sweep. It's all the same thing. Somebody is going to screenshot this, I know it. But yeah, that elevator sweep, it's one of the most powerful sweeps when done correctly. Alright, stop for just a minute. This is the last question, guys. It's the one that is going to allow you to sweep the guy who is bigger and stronger and a better wrestler than you. So, alright. Focus on that. Maybe I'll do a tutorial on why that is specifically the best sweep for MMA, in my opinion. Alright, guys. That is the last question. Thank you for tuning in for the live chat. You guys are awesome. Thanks for all the super chats. Thanks for all the questions. And thank you for watching. Now get out there and train. Train to fight off these children.
Train to kill Daddy. Train to finish.
Hold on, I need to hit the off button. Alright, stop.
Daddy.